Hi, it's Wednesday and it's time for Wednesday Ramblings. Hi, I'm Anna from Post Me a Book. As you might be able to hear, I've got a bit of a cold, but so has the rest of the world. So I'm not feeling sorry for myself. So to get on with my usual small update of what I'm reading or thinking of reading or thinking of doing, I will start off by saying I haven't got that much to say, but I do have something to say. I do have to just say this book that I'm reading, The Irresistible Rise of Multiracial Britain, which I mentioned in my last clip, I think, video clip. I wouldn't have thought this book was as riveting as it is, but it's actually very, as I said before, it's very informative. It's very interesting. It's very gripping because there's a lot of stories about the Caribbeans, folk from the Caribbeans. And it's not only from the Caribbean, Jamaica and other places, Guyana, and places like that, that came to Britain in the 1940s, 1960s. The stories that some of them tell are quite, I would say, extraordinary, even if when you think about it, perhaps it isn't so extraordinary. But they mentioned the time when London was still a bit of a slum, and a lot of the people from the Caribbeans who came to the UK in that time of Great Britain actually lived in many of these parts of London. They lived in Kensington, they lived in Kent, they lived in Paddington, all these areas. They were so slummy because that's what they say they were when they moved in there, because nobody else wanted to live there. So they ended up living there themselves. And they mentioned a certain guy, for example, a black guy who had moved to Britain, who used to, he had bought a lot of these houses and he was hiring out to other West Indians he was hiring them out via middlemen who were then hiring them out to the West Indians at exorbitant prices for that time. And they were renting them not by room either, but by parts of rooms. So what you paid rent for part of a bedroom, and you were there with 3 other people. And the history of this guy who actually owned all these places, for example, they were also saying that he wanted to buy some of these places that some of the white people lived in, poorer white people. So he had these places, one or the other, and he wanted to get rid of the white people so that because he couldn't quite ask them for the same kind of rent prices that he could with the West Indians. And so he sort of used techniques like saying, well, there are black people going to move in, so perhaps you better move out, kind of thing. And in those days, racism, not when the West Indians first came, but racism crept in as time went by. So it became a state where white people didn't want to live besides black people, or they didn't want to rent out to black people. So it was an easy technique by this guy to just say, well, if you want your neighbor to be a black person, stick around. But most of them moved out. So then he could start hiring out hiring out via his middlemen bits of rooms to the West Indians and making a heck of a lot of money. But I have to say, this man they say that he either met his end or he didn't. He might have faked his death. But it was a case where he was having an affair with an escort girl, I think she was, who was then linked to one of the ministers in government. It's such a crazy story. I'll have to retell it when I actually make a clip about the book. But it brought down some of the people in government, and it led to changes of how this man and other people were renting out just to make a lot of money. So they were renting out at exorbitant prices, which was not allowed after this change in the law. It's a very, very, very interesting book, I have to say. I'm glad I picked it up. At first, I didn't think it was going to be as fascinating. I thought it was just going to be your normal history book. Now I'm not much of a history reader, although I'm better But this one is quite gripping. And as it says, a fantastic and informative panorama of the experiences of the people who came to England in 1948, who paved the way for many descendants. And that is true. And one of the descendants was one of the writer. No. I think, yeah, actually, I do think the writers had relatives who came from the West Indies. I'm sure of it. I'll have to check that out. But anyway, yes, that one I'm still reading, but that one I just wanted to mention just because I found it very exciting. And otherwise, I'm feeling I should restructure my way of reading, because normally I just pick a book here, a book there. I find a book on the home library and I think, okay, that looks quite interesting, which, by the way, I did. That one. This one is called The Light in the Forest by Conrad Richter. That one was sitting on the shelf, and it's got a name, Robert, whoever Robert was, but I guess it belongs to a home library. And this one was written a while back. You can probably see that by the cover of the book. Let me see. Copyright 1953. So, not a young book. And I'm trying to read newer books, but anyway, this one is not very long. So perhaps I'll read this one and then I'll read newer books. This one, it says, is true son born John Butler in a little frontier town was captured by the Lenape Indians when he was 4 years old and adopted into a tribe by the great warrior Kailoga, who renamed him and reared him as his own. So he then became True Son. True Son grew up to think, feel, and fight like an Indian, to reverence their god. Then the Indians made a treaty, and agreed to return all white captives to their own people. But True Son had learned to hate all white men. The Light in the Forest, with all its harshness and violence, is a moving and beautiful story, eloquently told by one of America's finest writers. Now, I haven't actually heard of Conrad Richter, but I'm willing to give this book a try. And it says he's the author of The Trees, The Fields, and The Town, if anyone has heard of that book also. So this one's on my list. But otherwise, I'm thinking perhaps I should structure them in a sense where I read... I'm not quite sure how. I do have one structure in mind anyway, and that is, I know it's Black History Month. I picked this up rather late because it was just the other day. But I'm thinking I should read some books that fit Black History Month. And luckily, that one fits the bill because I haven't got very many days left. So that's one of them. Another one that I'm going to read is called Black Girl Call Home, I think. And that is, I heard about this one from, not this one, The Black Girl Called Home by, I can't quite remember, but I'll put it up somewhere there. From Florence, who is a book channel. Now I'm just getting things jumbled up. I blame the cold. No, I blame the cold that I have, not the cold weather. I can blame the cold weather for many things, but perhaps not the jumbling of my words. Florence, who has one more book podcast, I think, something like that. I'll put that down anyway. So Black Girl Call Home is one of those that I might be able to manage to read within this Black History Month before it's all over. February is a short month, but let's give it a try. And another one is a poetry book. I can't quite pronounce his name, but I'll put that one up there, which is also by a black poet, a UK-born poet. Unfortunately, he died, and this book I just found by chance, and I was reading about him, and I found out that he died. He wasn't very old at all, which, yeah, sad. But so his book I'm going to read because I'm into poetry just now. So that is pretty much it. I didn't have much more, and I don't want to start saying I'm going to read this, that, and the other, because I know I'm not going to manage to do it. I think I'm reading enough books for the time being. So It's all about restructuring and Black History Month. And of course, Windrush. So that's it from me for today. So thank you for watching. Until next time, bye bye. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye bye.